this is my overall FMP presentation. So let's go to my initial ideas. So in total, I had 3 initial ideas. My first initial idea was a documentary on feminism, which was going out on the streets and asking people what they think about feminism and gathering a documentary about this. The duration of this would be 5 to 10 minutes. Target audience, obviously 15 plus for all of them. And like why I choose making this project, because I believe that feminism is a powerful topic to work on and will grab a lot of attention from the public eye. The cast would have been me and the people on the streets, which are the pedestrians. My second initial idea was a short film on feminism, and this was going to be a short story that explains the lives of women in their homes and their struggles throughout the years and how they're hiding so much pain behind those doors. And they need to raise their voice. This is just about domestic violence against women in their homes. This would have been max 5 minutes, again 15 plus. As I wrote the same thing because I believe it's a powerful topic to be spoken about and it's important. My last initial idea was a podcast on feminism where feminists and non-feminists debate on topics that involve men and women, obviously. For this, the duration I thought would be 10 to 15 minutes, but it ended up being 42 minutes. So you guys clearly know that I've done the podcast. The cast will be me and my guest, people on the set. Again, I wrote the equipment resources I need. After this, I've obviously went through I did a, production paperwork, which is location recce, FMP. My location is the college again, because I did a podcast and I used a TV studio, as you can see as well. And this is, I filled in the production paperwork, electricity supply, food, parking, possible shops, safety issues. But I've done all of these and filled them in and hoping to read it yourself. And points of interest, Gen Z and above, toilets. There's toilets, college toilets, and they're right beside the TV studio. Lighting again is going to be controlled in the TV studio. Noise, there won't be any noise outside the studio. It's just in the studio, which is just going to be the people on camera. Outdoor noise, no noise. Indoor, yes, just the people in cameras. Safety issues, the wires might trip. I just, was very careful with safety. So this is my call sheet for the FMP. Again, my podcast is called The Debate, and I've added my, logo on there. Contacts, Gornaz and Hannah. I thought it'd be interesting to put another name on there. Again, I filled these in. I wrote the date, 26/03/2025. This was quite short as well and quick, but I had to fill these in. There's so many risk assessments. This is not it, sorry. This is it. I just need to change the name. I've done my risk assessment as well. There wasn't much I needed to talk about. Well, obviously not here, but here. A podcast debate on feminism and equality again. And then hazards, wires, cameras, everywhere can cause people to fall, God forbid. Who might be harmed by the hazard, everyone involved in the production, behind the scene, in the scene. This is a medium risk because we've never experienced, any kind of risks yet, like towards the people. And yeah, this is it. And again, the debate podcast date and everything. So this is my FMP research report, which took ages for me to do. Literally whole decades. Again, the introduction. From FMP, I've chosen to create a podcast on feminism. This is where I include feminists and non-feminists debating on differences between men and women and their rights. A feminist is someone who believes in social, economical and political equality for all genders. Feminism is a movement that claims to the end sexism and oppression to achieve gender equality in practice and law. And, I've talked about feminism here for so long and for so much. This would be definitely a calm podcast where we all try to understand each other and see different options and views on their perspectives and respect one another. I want to create this podcast of feminism because the topic people talk about often is a topic where people talk about often, and it's very common in this generation and the world. Feminism. I'll be the only one working on this project this year in my year. Only I'm the one that's doing something to do with feminism, which I think it's quite good just to be the one and only. There will be a specific message I would like to give to my audience that women do exist, even though we have most of our rights. This doesn't mean they are not treated unfairly. Women need to be heard all around the world and be respected. Women are getting murdered, raped every day of the year. One woman or girl is killed every 10 minutes by their intimate partners or other family members. My message is to say a stop to this and treating them equally. As a woman myself, I don't feel safe walking down the streets at night because of the cases that are taking place. I just keep looking behind me if anyone following me. This podcast will take place in the TV studio in college. The max duration of this podcast will be 15 minutes, which was never 15 minutes. Again, it was 42 minutes. We had a lot to talk about. Again, I did talk about my initial ideas. Initial ideas again. And I wrote a little explanation. In this feedback, I received the most recurrent option that was they enjoy the idea of including me feminism in my in my project. This was very helpful because I received my strengths and weaknesses for my initial ideas, and this made me gather more information on what I want to do. Since most of them voted for the idea 3 podcast, I thought about it and think it's a good idea and really entertaining for the audience. This also helped me create the idea of wanting them to debate instead of just talking about feminism, and also listening to one another. and the other side, and trying to understand their experience and opinions on certain things. This is definitely going to be a well-spoken, positive podcast without hurting one another's feelings. I also believe that this will have a lot of impact for my people, my age and my generation, because it's going to be hosted by me and an 18-year-old girl. Even though some people may say and think, what can an 18-year-old know about rights and feminism? I will prove them wrong by creating this podcast. This will be my first step into political problems and listen to different views of people's thoughts and experiences once again, as I really enjoy talking about politics and debating on things and wanting to become a journalist. I believe listening to others may help me understand people. I will try to reach out for the people in universities and try to get them participate in my podcast. I have started to look for universities and their feminism courses and found a few, and I'm going to email one of them members. Workflow, I've done a workflow here, so create brief, create a script and storyboards. I don't really need a script or a storyboard, but I did that virtually just by speaking it out. Start the paperwork, call sheet, location, recce, risk assessment. Again, I've decided my decision was a podcast about feminism today. Started filming podcasts, started editing, created surveys on projects and asking for feedback from my peers and teachers, and then publish this on my website, Wix and YouTube. Contextual research. The first word of feminism. Again, you can, get onto this website and read everything as well. And this is literally whole information on feminism, as I've put the link here. You can just click on here and just read through there as well. I wrote a lot about this. A lot. Women and work, final vote, War of the Roses, racists, World War One, and these specific leaders, black women throughout this first wave of feminism. Me Too and women's marches. The third wave feminism, who benefits from the feminist movements, and a lot that needs to be talked about. Modes of address, podcasts, mood, styles and tone of the voices will change to the topic and will be discussed. The mode of address refers to the tone and style media tests uses to communicate with the audience. You would expect a newsreader on television to use formal language to report the headlines, whereas a presenter on a child's YouTube channel will be more informal and they'll address their younger audience. Sorry, I'm a bit sick. Podcast formats, again, solo podcast, educational podcast, interview, private podcast, storytelling, documentary, co-hosted, narrative, hybrid, many more that we all don't know, or we know. There are many different podcasts that people find interesting and enjoy, like educational podcast or solo podcast. All of these formats have their own strengths and weaknesses and have their own goals they are trying to reach for. These formats affect a podcast by dictating the structure and style and the content is given, and also making it easier for the listeners to accept the next episode is going to be like. This is helpful. This has helped us build a recognisable brand and attract the dedicated audience. I've given a bit of examples of solo, interview, panel, educational, fictional, hybrid podcasts. The style, how to style a podcast. I've written a bit about this as well. Styling a podcast refers to the way you structure and present your audio content, including choosing a format like interview, solo, or narrative storytelling, crafting and engaging introduction and outro, managing sound quality, incorporating music and sound effects, and maintaining a constant tone and style that aligns with your topic and your target audience. It's very important to set up and the way your podcast looks, because if it's eye-catching to the public, then I think it'll be more interesting. It's very important the way your podcast is, looking, the tone, the colour combination and everything. And I wrote a bit about there as well. And then history of podcast. What is a podcast? So the podcast is the audio programming, just like talk radio, but you subscribe to it on your smartphone, computer, or any other suitable devices and listen to it wherever you like it. A podcast is a digital audio program consisting of a series of audio episodes that you can download or stream from the internet. It works very much like a radio show, but with one major difference: you can subscribe to a podcast and listen to it anytime you want. And The Illusion of Independence podcast is a Russian radio program created in 1989 in Rostov-on-Don and distributed on the Majestic Tape and Cast. I don't know how you pronounce that, but yes. It was the first Russian prototype of the media that was widely developed in the 1920s as podcasting. So it comes from here, podcasting, and it got really famous in the 1920s, which was created and made in 1989. And then economical podcasts scientifically impact the economy by creating a new avenue for the advertising revenue, particularly for the niche markets, allowing businesses to reach highly targeted audience through sponsored content and directly influence consumer behavior, which can lead to increased sales and economical activities with specific industries. So it will affect the economy in a good way and in a bad way. Socially, podcasts and significantly impacts society by providing a platform for the depth discussion. As I've mentioned, feminism. Socially, there is a lot of topics that people talk about in their podcasts, like feminism, just generally globally, just worldwide problems. People talk about their life experiences, people talk about stories, people talk about religion, everything that can entertain the world. Many filmmakers have podcasts, including cinematographers, television writers and screenwriters. Some of these podcasts include, Team Deakins, The Plot, Happier in Hollywood, and many more. And then I wrote about broadcast journalism, delivery of news and information via electronic media such as radio, television and internet. Broadcast journalism uses a variety of skills, including writing, speaking and video editing. Podcast journalism is a form of broadcast journalism that uses podcasts to report news and share stories. Podcasts allow journalists to explore topics in their depth and with more flexibility and traditional new formats. YouTubers and influencers, there are so many. I put so many examples. YouTubers and influencers that do have podcasts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again, 3 similar products that inspired my idea. I've mentioned these in my pitch as well, and I talked about these, so I'm not going to go through them again, but you can read through them. men's rights activists versus feminists. I've put, the link on there as well, so you may watch it yourself. Mary Harrington again. I've watched these podcasts on feminism, which helped me out a lot in my project by giving me the idea of what type of questions I'll ask in my FMP podcast, or also give me the idea on how I set up my podcast, how to make the colour coordination fit the vibe and the subject we are talking about. The setting of the podcast is quite important because if the stage is eye-catching, then it will get attention of the public as well. The questions that I'll be asking are worldwide problems like abortion, sexual assault, rape, human rights, and many more similar questions. I've also looked up different podcasts in different genres like comedy, gossip, etc. All of them are different. Audience research, again, feminism target audience is a broad and multi-faced. This primarily impacts women and girls. The movement goals, affects and individuals, all genders, identities, seeking, but specifically Gen Z. And as I've showed here as well, more likely to identify. So Gen Z women are more likely to identify as women. Oh shit! Sorry for swearing. Not as women, as feminists. And this is 53%. And there's a screenshot of here explaining it much better. The research has developed my project because it taught me many things and gave me multiple ideas over my FMP. I've learned many things as a feminist myself. So much has taken place in the world, in history. Both as I was researching, I was also planning my idea for my final major project, and I came up with a question suitable for my podcast. I've done by SWOT analysis, contextual and audience research. You guys can, read it, pause it and read it. Mood board, again, this was in my pitch. This was to help me understand the better aesthetic I want. I researched about mood boards and feminism mood boards. It helped me out a lot because it gave me better idea every time I did research on something relevant to my project. I've done this mood board to give me better understanding to my audience or what a podcast will be about and what it will contain. All of these things I've put on my mood board will be spoken about on my podcast. Location, again, simple, the college. Test shots. Before we started recording my actual podcast, we recorded a test shot for 30 minutes. I did this multiple times just in case I wouldn't be able to record my actual podcast and just use the ones I have filmed already. This also helped me how to plan the cameras perfectly placed so it gets all of us in the frame perfectly. And I had to change the camera angles multiple times. As you can see, these were the specific angles that we were filmed in. Rehearsals, they were many. I mentioned on the previous slide I had done practice take of this podcast, which was amazingly fun, and we all enjoyed it so well. And doing this made me understand how it's important to understand each other, how to problem solve. This is also all more for everyone in the podcast. We all are practicing on where to sit, how to speak and explain ourselves, and also our posture. All of these things are very important and eye-catching for the audience, especially how you display ourselves. So production, research, how long would the podcast take? It took me 2 hours to complete this podcast with the rehearsal. It was very long and frustrating, but we did it at the end. Again, a SWOT, strengths, planning, freedom of being creative, camera work, many more. Just read yourself through. Post-production research. For the music choice, I chose a simple sound effect for the intro, and at the end I used the song Label by Paris Pomoma, which some of the videos that include feminism. I specifically chose this song because it's a very meaningful song. and it's a song about women. And also had a lot of attention globally. I've also added pictures of the clips that I have used in my FMP ending scene with this song. So these are the pictures I've added. If you watch it, you will understand what they're saying. Evaluation and feedback on rough edits. I haven't done a rough edit because I've completed my final edit and uploaded it on YouTube and on my Wix website. My tutor said that it wasn't really important for me to do a rough edit of my podcast because it was a podcast. So I got feedback virtually face to face, which was even better and more helpful, and they made me understand what I need to do better for my future projects, and I learned some techniques from my peers as well. For example, adding templates from other websites into Final Cut Pro. This was such an helpful resource because most of the outros on Final Cut Pro are not the best. I've put my website on there as well, and the YouTube link on there as well. You can just check through, you can watch it. Harvard referencing, for the example, he or she, they wrote a lot because they used a lot of websites, but I only use Sky History, and I looked up the history of feminism, and it was very helpful, as I showed up here. All of this, obviously in my own words, they all came from this Sky History. It was very helpful as well. As I said, I learned many things as a feminist myself. It was very frustrating to, research, but very entertaining at the same time, because I didn't know most of these things, and these are basic knowledges, and I do know and I do believe that this information I've gathered so far throughout this FMP project will be very helpful for the future me as well. I'm done with my research report, that's it. And then I've got my final evaluation. This is very long as well. Okay, so the proposal, ever since this project was introduced to us, I knew I wanted to do something about feminism and their voices. As a feminist myself, I wanted to do something effective to the public. Even researching was enough because I found out many things I didn't know that are in history books. My final idea is a podcast that is taking place in a TV studio in college, which is about feminism, and I have 4 guests who will be debating on specific topics and questions that I'll be asking throughout this time. In total, there will be 6 questions. The first question is, to what extent do men in the UK have all their rights? Second question is feminism trying to remove masculinity from the society? Third question is, why do you think women experience more sexism than men? The fourth question is, do you think it's important for women to become mothers? The fifth question is it fair to say that women do more domestic chores than men in their homes? Last question is, do you think Andrew Tate is having a positive influence on the society? 2 people representing each side, 2 feminists and 2 anti-feminists. My first idea for this project was a documentary, as I've mentioned before as well in my initial ideas. And I spoke about the film, so I'm not going to go through that again. Well, there were, pros and cons in this as well. If I did the documentary outside in public, some people may not agree with me. Some people might start arguing with me. And unfortunately, I'm someone that can't stand that. So I will probably argue back. So I didn't do that. And this video has been going viral around the world on TikTok lately. This woman is asking a question about abortion, and she doesn't want to agree on this lady. She's asking the question to, and she gets hit in the face. She gets punched in the face because she didn't agree with this person. I don't know how it happened and that, but you know, I didn't want to experience anything like that. So I just got my hands off that idea. Again, I spoke about my initial ideas over here. They screenshotted it. Scripts, I didn't really need a script because I did a podcast. But in terms of this podcast, I did some research that not all podcasts require for a script. Most benefits from some of pre-planning outline, whether you can use a script outline or bullet points, depends on podcast format and your comfort level. Contextual research. As I said, as my project is a podcast, I started my contextual research by watching multiple podcasts with different genres. First, I began researching, with the same topic, which is feminism. Jubilee has really good debates on feminism. I could say I've watched Jubilee podcast only. It gave me many ideas for my project, like the way to set up my camera, the way I should lay out things, and even the lighting of the studio was really important for me as well. I looked up different lightings for the podcast as well, which was really helpful because it needed to match the atmosphere and the vibe I really wanted the colour coordination to fit with the sofa, which I believe I achieved, as you can see here as well. Audience research. Again, similar products I have watched that discuss gender equality, abortion, essay, sexual assault, pays, much more includes the topic of feminism. As I showed previously, these three inspired me into doing a podcast. And then, you know, there were 4 similar products, which are movies, helped me with this project. And I wrote a bit about the movies here as well. Just read yourself through. Believe me, you know, these are very important histories and stories that needs to be spoken about. Audience research. For my audience research, I've done a lot of research about the first wave of feminism and how it carried on till today and how they still exist. I also researched the percentage of feminists globally, and a significant portion of the population identifies as feminists. Through the exact percentage varies depending on the survey and specific definition of feminist used, and like many more. And like 58% of the people across 24 countries would define themselves as feminists, which I feel very proud of. Audience profile, been through that. Target, been through that. Primary, secondary. Visual research, again, I didn't write much because everything is on here. I took screenshots. In terms of visual, I had no doubts at first. I didn't know what to do. Since my project is a podcast and there are many podcasts that involve many visual attractions to the public, the way you display as well is very important because if it's eye-catching, then it'll be more noticed by the public eye. I did 3 screenshots. Planning and production. Again, all my paperwork here. Problem solving. Thinking about initial ideas was the first stage of planning, and as Anna mentioned, a lot happened with the whole pre-production process when I planned my project. The initial idea of mine have racially changed over a few months. It kept changing, and more I did the research on different topics, the more I filmed and realised I still had to do more about my project. I didn't need to do any budget research because I used the college equipment and the TV studio for my project, which was very helpful and smarter to the TV studio. For the production paperwork, I think I struggled a bit since I had to change the location a lot. Some of the locations were not matching my podcast anymore, so I had to delete some of my paperwork, and I had done them to make new ones for the location that I wanted to be filming, which was the college TV studio. I did need a storyboard as well because my project is a debate podcast. problem solving here. I've done this, and like 3 specific problems I had was out of time needed to record podcast, and then my guests let me down on the day I needed them. One of the mics were not working during the podcast. These 3 main problems I had was a lack of time, with my guests turning me down, and I needed them. And I needed a audio problem with one of the microphones. I fixed all of these. With the first one, I booked the TV studio for another day, and I managed to do that in 2 hours, film the podcast in 2 hours. My guests, they let me down the same day, so I needed to quickly problem solve and find other people, which were people in college, and that was quick, thanks to my friends. And lastly, the other problem I had was one of the mics were not working throughout this podcast, and luckily we realised that in the beginning. We had 4 microphones, so then one of them wasn't working. As I said, I had 4 guests, so 2 used one, the other 2 used one, and I used one, which was quite smart of me as well. Filming and editing, SWOT again, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. I've written a lot for this as well. So for strengths, I've realised many strengths that helped me handle this project. In my opinion, one of the strengths were problem solving, because I had a lot of problems throughout this podcast, which was making me very anxious and stressful and doubting myself, which I regret thinking like that. It's always the best, I think, and have a plan B. Weaknesses, my weakness is when I changed the initial idea multiple times. I wasn't so sure about it. I don't know which would be the best for me, because they were all the same topic, but I don't know how to make a movement on this. I don't know if I should do a documentary, a podcast, or a short film, but I still did end up doing a short film. Opportunities. After facing my strengths and weaknesses during this project, I've realised those were the things I need to look at for and improve on, which I'm very happy and proud about. For example, I should try to make sure that I will plan any future projects that I will have. It doesn't necessarily have to be a media one, but any project, homework in general. As well as I need to work on my time management. It's important to follow deadlines. Therefore, I need to make sure that I have everything ready at least 1 to 2 weeks before the deadline, so I have enough time to get feedback and improve on, which is very right. Threats, I think I had to take the production again. I would change many things. I would try to develop my idea sooner, plan out everything in detail. The threats I faced so far, the things like management. For future projects, I need to manage any time strictly and clearly, because the project I lost a lot of time. I had to retake my podcast, and the retake I had half an hour to film because my guest let me down at my production day, and I had to find someone as soon as possible. Oh my god, sorry, I'm sick. Audience feedback. Throughout this podcast, I've received various feedback from my peers and tutors, which was always helpful and affected my podcast in the best way possible. This podcast is specifically the project I worked hard on the most, and strictly because it was a solo project, so I was a bit scared, a bit anxious, and it's my first time working alone on a project, so it was a bit scary, but I did it at the end. Conclusion. In conclusion, I had to overcome many obstacles during this project, starting with the completions of the initial ideas. I had many ideas that I wanted to include in this project, but obviously I had to end up doing one initial idea. In my opinion, I met the most proposed aims I had in my UA proposal. I did have to change it a lot during the production, since my idea kept changing slightly every time I would film. However, it was quickly react to the situation and evaluating my work process. My similar ideas were quite professional and famous, and I had 3 similar products and 4 similar movies. All of them were connected to each other by the topic of feminism. Each movie had a storyline for each woman in different situations throughout their lives, and how we affected them in a good way and how society has affected them as well. The other side of the podcast were much different than the movies, obviously, because the podcast is what I watched were debates on feminism, and they are public, specific questions on the topic like abortion, sexual assault, rape, gender equality, discrimination, many other similar topics that go under the phrase feminism. I do believe that all of these helped me out, and a few of my questions are influenced by the podcasts I've watched, and those questions have really interested me throughout this time. And I believe that the questions I've asked in my podcast are the best suitable questions I could ever asked for feminists and non-feminists. If I was to start a production again, I would definitely work on better my time management skills. I would try to plan the podcast better. The additional plans I had could have worked with if my original idea didn't work. So a lot more with the research report, even though in my opinion research report I did good enough for me. In conclusion, I am satisfied by what I did as my last project in the media industry. And I'm more satisfied, what the hell? Sorry, I couldn't read. Satisfied with the topic I was doing about, because I'm going to do further education, which is journalism, and I want this to be a part of my future job. All the skills I've developed during this project, all the feedback I've got, everything I learned, everything I improved, my own knowledge and will help me more in my future creative industry. I've done the Euro proposal as well. I forgot about this. If I didn't read my final evaluation, I would have not shown this as well. Throughout my course, I've learned various of new skills, learning to make plan of all the shots I need for, the edit to make the work look more professional. This not only helps me with post-production, but also sets I know exactly what I need to film. The reflective journal is one of the most important ways to lay out your work. And the reflective journal is really important as well. I should have shown that in the beginning, but I don't know why I'm doing that at the last. I've improved a lot with my, editing skills. The green screen room was very helpful for many things as well, like making it look like different locations by setting up differently, by the camera angles, by the lighting. Okay, this project is going to be a podcast about feminism and their rights, and it's going to be a debate between a feminist and a non-feminist and their opinions and experiences on things, as I've mentioned for the 10,000th flipping time. I'll be hosting this podcast and asking them 5 questions, actually 6. And as I mentioned as well, the duration of this podcast project will be 10 to 15 minutes, which was never 15 minutes. It ended up being 45 minutes. Again, the project concept, I've talked about it. It's, the same exact thing I've written. It's just a bit of different words. For the evaluation, I will reflect back to my work by looking back at my reflective journal, because all my projects are saved there. This helps me with the work and what I've done so far, and by that I can improve on any future projects, because I know I've already achieved that. Audience feedback is probably one of the most effective things so far. Their thoughts and opinions do matter in my point of view. I believe it puts in a lot of impact. For example, a survey to gather the audience opinions is really important, because in the film industry the audience matters a lot, and due to this a few changes could and will take place. All of these experiences for me will help me understand what the film industry could look like, as well as there are many struggles throughout it, and there are always a lot of advantages and disadvantages and amazing memories. Even doing media in college right now feels like I'm already in the film industry. It just feels so right. Let's hopefully, lastly, a reflective journal. I don't know if I think I've done that. I don't think so. Okay, so let's go down to the FMP. Okay, so it starts from here. As I've done my pitch. One of the first things I did was my pitch. And like, I've completed my FMP pitch. My FMP pitch is about feminism, because my final major project topic is feminism, as I've created a podcast debate on feminism where it involves college students and myself, the host of this podcast. Personal performance, I do believe I did great in this, which I gave myself 5 out of 5. I do like the way I displayed the way it looks as well. Technical skills 4 out of 5, because I gained a lot of experience on my editing. A research report was one of the next things I've done, and like I put some screenshots on here. Again, I literally explained this as well. Personal performance, I do believe I was a 5 out of 5. Technical skills 4 out of 5. Research skills 5 out of 5, because I literally researched the life out of this. So even better if I make my words more clear with the information I've written down, because yeah, I need to do that. I need to consider, you are reflective to help me decision on how to improve the best. And production paperwork, again, location recce, I wrote this down. And then contextual research and audience research, I've put a screenshot down again. And then wrote a few things about her here. You can just pause it and just read it. Again, our pitches. I edited my pitch, so that's like the rest. That's it so far. That's probably everything I've done. I think I've talked about everything so far. Yeah, that's it, I guess. Well, thank you very much for your time. Hopefully you don't listen to all of this, because I was struggling throughout the whole thing, but I hope I could explain myself, and I hope you understand. Thank you.